So now we've broken down the individuals. Let's get into the team win totals for the upcoming season. I do this in every sport. It's just the CFL one. It's quicker. But now let's break down that this is basically just a division preview masked with gambling. In the CFL, we start at the bottom and work our way up. I think in last place, and this could be a bit of a surprise given the city I'm broadcasting from, I think in last place it's the Stampeders. I think losing the weapons they did offensively, even just in training camp here with the injuries, is a real hit. I think they have a very, very good defense, do not get me wrong, but I still think that they have lost too many pieces to be very competitive. I think the teams around them have gotten better, and we'll get to that in a second. But I think the biggest thing, I don't trust the quarterback. I have seen enough now of Calgary's mayor to just believe that this is not a quarterback that can lead this team anywhere that they want to go. So I don't buy the quarterback. I don't buy the weapons that he's throwing to. And I think the defense is very, very good, but not good enough to sustain with this offense playing that the way it does. So I have Calgary under 7 wins and in last place this year. The total for the Edmonton Elks is at 6.5. I'm going over. This team would have got over that last year if Chris Jones could have got out of his way and started Trey Ford earlier. Now they go with McLeod Bethel Thompson, but this is still an upgrade at the quarterback spot. I do worry about this team defensively. I still don't think they have enough difference makers, like we talked about it before. In the difference makers part of this, Edmonton didn't have any on the defensive side. I worry about this team defensively, but I think offensively, they have enough that they'll be able to get right around 500. I have Saskatchewan going over 7.5. I think they get over that easily last year if Trevor Harris stays healthy. Corey Mace, I think, sets a tone for this franchise and absolutely gets this team ready to go. And I think that they made enough additions on the defensive side of the ball to improve things that they'll be able to move into a playoff spot in the West. It does still feel like they're a guy short defensively to really make some noise, but to get to 500, absolutely 100%. In second place, I have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers coming in under 12.5 wins. And this isn't like I don't think they go substantially under 12.5. I just don't see this being a 13-5 team this year. I think that they are going to have maybe a little bit less success against the BC Lions this year. I think that they have players that are aging, which like literally everyone does just based on how time works. But this is an old group that's getting older, and they have lost a couple of pieces along the way. And I think that's enough to just tick them a notch below BC. They're not falling out of anything. Like they are going to be very competitive throughout the season, but I just think they go a notch below BC, who obviously now is my number one team in the West. I have them over 11.5 wins. I am concerned with how much they've lost, to be completely frank. Because when you go through, it's like, well, sure seems like a lot of dudes who aren't there anymore who were really good last year. I think Vernon Adams is good enough to replace that. We saw last year was the year of quarterback injuries. If anything happens there, I mean, they're hooped. But you can say that about Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary. Toronto is dealing with it currently, not injury related, but you know what I mean. Like all these teams, if the quarterback gets hurt, like, yeah, it's not going to be ideal. So may as well just like predict along with everything anyway, because you can say that about every football team. I think the rest of it is still good enough to win the West and maybe beyond. Out east, in last place, I have the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So get ready for it, McMahon Stadium, coming up on Friday night. Two teams I predicted to finish last in their divisions going head to head. I have Hamilton under 8.5. I don't think this is a good football team. Scott Milanovic is a good head coach, but Orlando Steinauer I thought was a good head coach, and he couldn't get this team much beyond 8.5. So I have them under. I think Bo Levi Mitchell is just cooked. I don't think they have real viable options behind him, and I think this offense gets worse and worse as the years go on. So all the way out on Hamilton, which means Ottawa getting in there over 6.5. I have said before, they had one of the best off seasons of any team in the CFL. They have now built a foundation. I wish more of that foundation included anyone defensively, because that was a real problem for them last year. But with Brown and with Rhymes, they have started something there. And I think this team is competitive in the Canadian Football League this year. I have them over 6.5. Up next is Toronto. I have them over 8.5. I think Dinwiddie is a good enough coach that he can get this team to 500 if Cameron Dukes is the quarterback for the entire season. Chad Kelly not being there for 9 games at least, just from a footballing standpoint, is absolutely not ideal. Obviously, there are some real life things going on with that, and just deplorable real life things going on with that. But from a footballing standpoint, I still think this team, while they have lost, again, quite a few pieces in free agency, I do think that they are a team that still has enough there, especially with those game breakers that we talked about on the defensive side. I think they're going to win games differently this year, but they're still going to win games. Sorry. I have Toronto over 8.5. And so in first place, I have Montreal over 10.5. I am really buying in on Montreal taking a step coming off of that Grey Cup. I think Cody Fajardo, he's not going to move into the elite. He's not going to crack this top 10. He might make the difference makers list next year. But Cody Fajardo is someone who I think now, gaining that confidence off of the proof of concept of winning the Grey Cup, even if it was just 3 good games, I think that, along with Jason Moss and this excellent defense, gets this team to first place in the West Division. And so my playoff predictions, I have in the West semifinal, Winnipeg beating Saskatchewan. In the East semifinal, I do have Toronto over Ottawa. West final, BC over Winnipeg. East final, Montreal over Toronto, so a little chalky based on everything I've predicted. And your Grey Cup champions for the 2024 season, the BC Lions. I have them beating the Montreal Alouettes. So those are my picks. What, though, am I most confident in clicking on? Let's find out. We're bringing it back. It is today's ticket. All right, a couple of these I got earlier on doing the CFL previews. Hamilton, I got them at under 8. The total's now 8.5, so we're feeling better about that. 8 wins doesn't get us a push anymore in the official prediction, but for what I clicked on, it's still 8. I have Calgary under 7 for all the reasons I just explained. Also, I think BC plus 450 is a good number to get them at as Grey Cup champions, so I pick the Lions as your Grey Cup winners. We also have a couple other notes for more immediately today. First, it is the Baltimore Orioles plus 100 over the Toronto Blue Jays. I know Barrios is pitching for the Jays. That doesn't seem to matter. This team is just not good enough to beat Baltimore. So I have the Orioles plus 100, and I have the Padres minus a run and a half over the LA Angels.